I never saw it coming. That night transformed everything in a way I could not comprehend. After 3 years of marriage, when Isabel, my wife, invited me to supper with her friends, a rare gesture, I held on to it as a hopeful sign. I dressed in my nicest suit and set off with a heart full of cautious anticipation. I had always imagined that these moments, tiny as they might seem, could bridge the growing distance between us. As I straightened my tie and glanced in the mirror, I attempted to convince myself that this supper was our chance to rediscover the bond we once shared. I arrived at the restaurant 2 minutes late, delayed by a stubborn parking spot. Even that small delay appeared to set the tone for the evening. The instant I stepped through the door, I felt a shift in the air. The restaurant, typically warm and welcoming, felt curiously disconnected. I surveyed the room until I noticed Isabel seated with her friends, Lila and Bianca. Instead of greeting me with the warmth I had hoped for, she provided merely a glancing glance before continuing her lively chat. I took my seat, trying to cover the sinking feeling in my chest. With a false smile, hesitantly, I entered the conversation, eager to be part of something I believed was essential to her. But every time I tried to talk, she cut me off with a contemptuous tone. I remember the moment when I admired her outfit, a simple comment, meant to appreciate her attractiveness, and she scoffed, whispering, "You should concentrate on your own looks." That single line, given with chilly detachment, reverberated in my ears as her friends exchanged covert glances and smothered their laughs. Throughout the supper, the atmosphere grew darker with each passing minute. I strained to contribute meaningfully, yet I felt increasingly like a spectator in a drama where I was no longer the main character. The table became a platform for undermining comments and side-eye stares. I watched in wonder as the woman I had once adored systematically ignored my attempts at conversation, each remark eating away at the foundation of our shared history. Every word I uttered was answered with a look of disinterest, as though my very presence was an annoyance, a vestige of a bygone period that no longer belonged in her new life. As the waiter carefully handed the bill across the table, a sensation of finality rushed over me. Without a hint of regret, Isabel pulled the bill toward me, sneering as she announced, "You know what? I don't think this is working. I deserve better. A man like you should be grateful I ever married you." In that cold moment, the world around me slowed to an agonizing crawl. The words, so carelessly stated, felt like a verdict, one that not only demolished the traces of our shared history, but also removed any prospect of reconciliation. Her friend's silent laughter boomed in my ears, each note a confirmation of my greatest fears. I sat staring at the $350 bill, now symbolic of the cost of my shattered pride and the loss of everything I once believed was true. In the silence that followed, I was overwhelmed by a cold, peaceful acceptance. I replayed every event in my head, trying frantically to fathom how the evening had taken such a severe turn. I questioned every smile we had shared over the years, every tender word that now felt like a lie. The evening had been more than simply a meal. It had been an unraveling, a public display of indifference that left me exposed and vulnerable. Each second felt interminable, a mix of disbelief and despair that slowly fell over me like a blanket. As I sat alone amid the wreckage of our past existence, I began to see the painful truth. She thought this was over, that our years together were now nothing more than a collection of memories doomed to fade. Yet, in the midst of my despair, an odd clarity dawned. I saw that the tragic end of that night was not just a loss, but also the beginning of something fresh. An opportunity to reestablish myself and regain the aspects of myself that had been eclipsed by the weight of false promises. I left the restaurant with a sorrowful heart, the crisp night air outside contrasting sharply with the warmth of the table we had once shared. Driving home slowly, I allowed my mind to roam over the events of the evening, each memory a stepping stone toward a future that, while unclear, promised the possibility of self-discovery. In the solitude of that long drive, every red light and every quiet stretch of road became a moment of introspection. I recognized that the dinner disaster was not simply an end, but a painful, necessary beginning. When I arrived home, I paid the bill without a word and let the gloomy sky mirror the sadness inside me. I sat on my worn-out couch and poured myself a drink, my hands quivering as I tried to sort through every painful detail of the evening. I revisited the recollection of that horrible supper, the sneers, the mocking glances, and especially her frigid comments, and pondered how the woman I thought I knew could turn so cruel in public. Then my phone began to ring continuously. My call log revealed 13 missed calls from unexpected numbers. When I finally answered one, I heard the shaky voice of Isabel's mother, sounding both upset and confused. Soon after, texts flooded in from her sister and even her best friend, Bianca. But it wasn't Isabel reaching out. It was her family, attempting to piece together what had truly transpired. Each call heightened the sensation that the truth was far from what I had witnessed. Seeking answers, I logged onto her social media account, a choice born out of a need for proof rather than revenge. There it was, as if to underline the disaster, a selfie shot at the restaurant, accompanied by the caption, "Starting fresh, new beginnings, restart." The irony was crushing. The very woman who had once pledged me love and commitment now celebrated what appeared to be a new start, leaving me to rethink all we had built together. As I sat there lost in thought, I realized that the lies extended far beyond that single supper. Isabel had always been a master of acting, but I had never thought that her mask would slip so openly. I began to recollect little signs over the years, slight contradictions in her words, offhand remarks I had dismissed as mood swings. Each recollection came back with sharp clarity, revealing a pattern of lies that had been steadily, purposefully woven into the fabric of our marriage. Determined to uncover the truth, I reached out to Leo, my coworker, and one of the only people who had ever hinted at knowing the real Isabel. His voice quivered with trepidation as he said, "Man, I don't know if I should tell you this, but Isabel's been saying some wild things about you at her office. You might want to look into it." At first, I brushed off his words, but as I mulled over his tone and the careful way he had spoken, I realized there was a hidden agenda at work. The more I investigated, the darker the picture became. Isabel had been constructing a narrative that painted me as the villain, the lazy husband, the insecure partner. She had systematically distanced me from the people who once believed in our love. The concept that she had been lying about me for years was a painful pill to swallow. Yet it was also liberating. It showed that I was not alone in my sorrow. Others had seen the cracks in the story she told. Armed with this unsettling knowledge, I felt an urgency to fight back, not for revenge, but to reclaim the truth. I began to document every memory, every discussion that hinted at the reality beneath her falsehoods. The challenge ahead was enormous, but as I glanced at the unanswered calls and messages on my phone, I promised myself one thing: I would not let her deception define me. This was the beginning of my journey toward truth and liberation, no matter how steep the path ahead might be. I saw her face drain of color as the weight of my announcement registered. That simple statement, uttered with quiet authority, was like a key turning in a lock. I could see the realization dawning on her. She had never expected this day to come. Every carefully crafted moment of our past now felt like a stage show, destined to be undone. I could practically hear the murmurs of incredulity from her family, who had been inadvertent players in the sophisticated drama of our marriage. Each compassionate gaze, each tentative inquiry from those around us, only highlighted the rising tension. I sensed that the truth, long buried beneath a shell of perfection, was finally ready to surface. I escorted her to a secluded corner of the room, away from the prying eyes and ears of her family. But I knew. The damage had already been done. My earlier announcement had set the stage. As we sat down, I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. I knew this conversation would be hard, not just for Isabel, but for everyone who had been fooled by the narrative she had so masterfully constructed over the years. I began by describing the events of that catastrophic meal. My voice was firm, even as each word reminded me of the public embarrassment, the sting of her dismissive tone. I highlighted how her friends' laughter, the cutting looks, the casual disregard